"You don't touch a general's legs without permission," someone shouted across the training field, but Private Ellie Monroe didn't move. Her hands were already on his legs, lifeless, unmoving, since the explosion 15 years ago that changed everything. The whispers started instantly. "That's General Donovan. She's finished. What is she doing?" But Ellie's eyes were locked on the man in the wheelchair, her breath shaky, her fingers trembling. She did something no one dared. She rolled up the general's pant leg and reached into her pocket. Before we move further into this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear. Let's dive in. General Donovan was a living legend, one of the most decorated officers in modern US military history. He'd survived ambushes, led impossible missions, and earned respect across the world. But he hadn't even tried to walk, since Kandahar, when an IED shattered the lower half of his spine. Since then, he commanded from a wheelchair, stoic and silent, never speaking of the past, never asking for pity. For the last 15 years, no one had dared challenge the image of the invincible man who no longer stood. Ellie Monroe was a different kind of soldier. She was quiet, blonde, and new, just 2 weeks on base. She trained hard, kept to herself, and never made trouble. No one expected her to stand out. But that morning, something changed. During drills, Ellie had tripped hard, scraping her knee badly. As others laughed or kept moving, it was the general who rolled forward and handed her a handkerchief. "Pain makes us sharp," he said, "or it breaks us." Ellie looked up, face flushed, and whispered, "What if it could also heal us?" That question haunted her all day. It wasn't random. Her father, a former soldier, had also been paralyzed. Doctors gave up. But Ellie's family never did. Her grandfather, a native healer, had passed down an old method. Part herbal, part pressure point therapy, part belief. Ellie had watched her father twitch, move, and finally walk again. It wasn't magic, it was memory. Cell memory, nerve echo, her grandfather called it. And now, staring at General Donovan's legs, she knew the same energy was still there. So against every rule, Ellie knelt beside him. She reached into her cargo pocket and pulled out a worn cloth pouch. Inside was a balm she'd made herself and a smooth stone her grandfather had blessed before he passed. Her hands moved carefully, reverently. She rubbed the balm into his knees, eyes shut, whispering under her breath. "Get away from him," an officer screamed, running toward them, but Donovan lifted one hand and stopped him cold. "Let her finish," the general said, voice firm. Time seemed to freeze, even the wind quieted. Everyone on the field was staring now. Ellie leaned closer, pressing the stone into key points along his leg. Not just muscle, memory. Not just body, belief. She wasn't treating an injury, she was speaking to it. And then, it happened. His foot twitched, gasps exploded across the field, a second twitch, a tremble, then a visible flex of the muscle. Donovan's eyes widened in disbelief. His breathing changed. He looked down at his own leg like it belonged to someone else. Then, softly, he said, "Help me." Ellie stood, hands under his arms. He braced against her shoulders. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, he lifted himself from the chair. First an inch, then more. Until finally, unbelievably, General Donovan was standing, on his own legs. No one spoke. A few cadets dropped their weapons in shock. Others dropped to their knees. One saluted through tears. The general stood for only a few seconds, but it felt like eternity. His eyes locked on Ellie's. "How?" he whispered, broken by awe. Ellie wiped her face, trying to smile through tears. "My dad. We thought he'd never walk again, but my grandfather helped him remember. Sometimes the body forgets what it can do. Sometimes it just needs someone to believe it still can." Donovan sat slowly back into his chair, but something in him had shifted. Something in everyone had. The man once called the Iron Shadow was human again, restored, vulnerable, powerful in a new way. He looked at Ellie. "Private Monroe. From this day forward, you're not just a soldier, you're a healer. And I'll make sure the world knows it." That night, the base buzzed with one story, how a young private made the general stand. The footage hit the internet the next day. Millions watched in disbelief. Comment sections filled with words like miracle, angel, energy medicine. Experts debated it, but none of them could erase what was seen. A man who hadn't walked in 15 years, moved, and all because one woman dared to kneel, to hope, to believe the past didn't have to be permanent. The next morning, during roll call, General Donovan walked onto the field, unaided, upright, steady. Soldiers erupted into applause. Even the skeptics cried. The army didn't just gain a new healer, it rediscovered a piece of its heart. Sometimes healing begins where rules end. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do in uniform is care. If this story touched you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know how you feel in the comments.